she gave everything for the family that turned their backs on her. Years later, they invited her back. Not with love, but with silence. They thought she was broken. They thought she'd stay gone. But she walked back in, not to ask for forgiveness, but to speak the truth they spent years trying to bury. One night. One voice. And a reckoning they never saw coming. A story of betrayal, silence, and the courage to be seen. Don't miss a moment, watch until the very end. Part 1, A Letter from the Past. My name is Evelyn Foster. 4 years ago, my family didn't just turn their backs on me, they erased me. Quietly, completely, like sweeping a name off a gravestone. I vanished from photo albums. My name disappeared from our family's shared holiday newsletters. At my father's funeral, they told the staff not to let me in. I stood outside the gates in the rain. Black dress soaked through, heart clenched so tightly I couldn't breathe. No one opened the door. No one looked back. I moved away not long after, packed up my life into a battered Honda and drove until the highway felt like it might forget my name. I settled in Greenville, in a quiet neighborhood where no one asked questions. I found work as a legal advocate, mostly housing disputes, custody cases, things other lawyers deemed too messy. I liked the mess. At least it felt real. Then, one quiet Thursday afternoon, with leaves rustling outside and the sun painting my living room gold, I opened my mailbox. Mixed between utility bills, junk coupons, and a flyer for discounted carpet cleaning, was an envelope. Ivory. Heavy. The kind of paper that whispers money before you even touch it. Sealed in deep red wax. Pressed with the Whitmore family crest, a lion and a quill. Our coat of arms. My bloodline. My fingers froze mid-reach. For a moment, the world narrowed to that single object. Just the sight of it made my chest tighten, like someone had slipped their hand inside and clenched my heart. I carried it inside like a bomb. Sat down at the kitchen table. Stared at it. I didn't open it. Not right away. I just stared. Why now? Why after all this time? Eventually, I reached for the letter opener, hands trembling like I was unlocking something long buried. The seal cracked with a soft snap. That familiar scent, lavender and ink, hit me instantly. Inside was a wedding invitation. The Whitmore family invites you to the wedding of Caleb Whitmore and Amelia Grace Bennett. To be held at the Whitmore estate on Saturday, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Caleb. My little brother. The golden boy. The family's pride and joy. The same man who, 4 Christmases ago, stood in front of 24 relatives, lifted a glass of champagne, and declared, "My sister thinks she's better than us now." Chose criminals over kin. And just like that, they all turned. No one stopped him. No one defended me. I remember rising from the dinner table, folding my napkin with shaking fingers, and walking out of the Whitmore estate, without a word. Without a goodbye. That was the last time I saw any of them. Until now. I set the invitation on the table, careful like it might explode. Then, something else slid out of the envelope. A small sheet of paper. No gold trim. No elegant font. Just shaky handwriting in fading blue ink. Please come. I miss you. They don't know I'm writing this. Mom. It took my breath away. My mother. The woman who had said nothing as I packed my bags. Who turned away when I stood crying in the hallway. Who closed the door behind me and never opened it again. Now, a whisper. Tucked into a corner of paper, hidden between celebrations. Not a call. Not a visit. Just ink. I stood up. Walked to the window. The trees outside swayed gently in the wind, leaves catching golden light like memories refusing to fall. My fingers found the chain around my neck, a silver pendant of Lady Justice. A gift from my grandfather, the day I passed the bar. He had held my hand and said, "You don't need to be accepted to be worthy. You already are." He was the only one who believed in me. And he's gone now. My thumb traced the pendant. The weight of it steadied me. Should I go back? Should I walk into that house again? Knowing what they'd done? What they'd said? Not to forgive. Not to forget. But to face them. To remind them that I exist. That I survived. I didn't make a decision that day. Not fully. But something inside me stirred, something I hadn't felt in years. Not anger. Not sadness. Just clarity. This wasn't just a wedding invitation. It was an opening. And if they were writing a new chapter of the Whitmore legacy without me, then maybe it was time I rewrote the story. On my own terms. Part 2, The Winter That Broke Me. Some winters don't come with snow. They come with silence. 4 years ago, during one of those winters, I lost more than just my family. I lost the version of myself that believed they would never turn on me. It was Christmas Eve at the Whitmore estate. The air smelled like cinnamon and pine and something else, something artificial. Like forced smiles and secrets tucked under wrapping paper. I had arrived late. Court ran over, and I'd just come from an emergency custody hearing where a mother begged the judge not to take her baby. I still had her voice in my ears when I pulled into the gravel drive. My heels clicked too loudly in the marble foyer. I smoothed down my skirt, ran a hand through my windblown hair, and tried to blend in with the world I used to belong to. The house was lit up like a Hallmark movie. Twinkling lights, gold-ribboned wreaths, hand-stitched stockings with every family member's name hung precisely over the fireplace, except mine. Not that I expected one. But it still stung. I took a glass of cider from a passing server and tried not to feel the weight of the stares. The cousins who now avoided eye contact. The aunts who once called me our future senator now murmured about how tired I looked. That night, I called Lisa, my best friend and closest tether to sanity. She knew the story. She was there when I crashed on her couch for 3 nights after the Christmas fallout. She held me through the silence that followed. I texted her, "Should I go back?" Seconds passed. Then her reply. "Only if it's for you. Not for them. You don't need their approval. Evelyn. You never did." I stared at those words like they were a mirror. Because the truth was, a part of me still wondered. Still wanted someone, anyone, to say, "We were wrong." I didn't need an apology wrapped in flowers or a speech at a family dinner. I just needed someone to say they saw me. Really saw me. But people like the Whitmores, they didn't admit things like that. They rewrote history instead. Made the truth fit the story they wanted to tell. And in their story, I was the one who walked away. The one who couldn't handle pressure. The one who chose the wrong side. They never mentioned what Caleb said that night. Never acknowledged the way they all sat there silent as I disappeared. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror. That damn invitation still sitting on the counter behind me. My reflection looked calm, composed, like someone who had nothing left to prove. But I knew better. I reached for the silver pendant resting at the base of my throat. Lady Justice. Blindfolded. Balanced. A gift from my grandfather. The only person in my family who ever saw me for who I really was. I pressed it to my lips. For courage. For clarity. For him. And then I turned back to the envelope. Still un-RSVP'd. Still waiting. This wasn't just a question of whether or not I'd attend a wedding. This was about reclaiming a place in the narrative I never should have been cut out of. This time, I wasn't going back as the girl who once begged to belong. I was going back as the woman who no longer needed to. Part 3, Return or Reckoning. The invitation sat on my counter for 3 more days. Each morning, I walked past it with my coffee, pretending not to care. Each night, I saw it under the kitchen light, still unopened, still humming with the weight of unspoken history. It was a trap or a test, or maybe both. I told myself I wouldn't decide yet. That I'd think it over. But the truth was, the moment I saw my mother's note, the decision had already begun to take shape. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet. Steady. Like water eroding stone. It was Tuesday evening when I finally picked up my phone and typed out a message. Lisa. If I go back there, I'm not going for them. Her reply came instantly, like she'd been waiting. Good. Go for you. But go ready. I stared at those words. Go ready. Ready for what? The cold smiles? The whispers? Caleb's smug grin? Or worse, nothing at all. Indifference. Erasure. That night, I couldn't sleep. Instead, I pulled out a shoebox I hadn't touched in years, the one with scraps of the life I left behind. Newspaper clippings. Old court documents. Letters of recommendation. My grandfather's last handwritten note before he passed, folded carefully in a yellowing envelope. His words were short, but they cut deeper than anything the Whitmores ever said. Real power doesn't shout. It just refuses to kneel. You weren't made to be accepted, Evelyn. You were made to outgrow them. I pressed the paper to my chest and closed my eyes. And for the first time in 4 years, I didn't feel erased. I felt ready. The next morning, I slipped the RSVP card into its return envelope. In clean, deliberate letters, I wrote, I'll be there. No flourish. No explanation. Just truth. I sealed it. Walked down the street. Dropped it into the blue mailbox with the rusted corners and faded paint. The metal door slammed shut like a gavel. Final. Irrevocable. Done. That afternoon, I drove past my usual courthouse exit. Instead, I turned left. Instinct guided me. The road narrowed. Houses thinned. And finally, I pulled into a quiet cemetery just outside of town. Tall oaks lined the perimeter like silent sentinels. Leaves crunched under my boots as I walked uphill, bouquet in hand. I hadn't been here since the funeral. I stopped in front of the headstone. Weathered marble, slightly tilted. But the name was still clear. Judge Harold Foster. Justice without fear. Integrity without apology. I knelt, brushing leaves from the base. And placed the flowers down. Hey, Grandpa, I whispered. My voice cracked more than I expected. I got invited back. The wind answered in soft gusts, lifting the hem of my coat. I pulled out the small envelope with his last letter and read it again. You won't always be their favorite. You weren't born to be. You were born to rise anyway. I folded the letter. Slipped it back into my coat and stood. He would have told me to go. Not to make peace. But to stand in the fire and not burn. Back home, I did something I hadn't done in years. I Googled Amelia Grace Bennett. Caleb's bride. I expected country club photos and soft smiles, the usual debutante story. Instead, what I found stopped me cold. She was a lawyer. A damn good one. Specialized in housing law. Tenant rights. She'd worked on a high-profile eviction case in Charleston last year, one I'd actually presided over. I remembered her now, young, sharp, relentless. She'd torn through a developer's lies like they were paper. She never flinched. Never blinked. And she won. Back then, I didn't know her name. Now, I couldn't unknow it. She was marrying Caleb. The same Caleb who once raised his glass and called me a disgrace for defending people like her clients. The irony stung like salt. Did she know? Did she know who I was? What they did to me? Or had Caleb edited the story? Turned me into the bitter, unstable sister who walked away in shame? I stared at the screen, her photo smiling back at me, confident, composed. Then I opened a new document. And started writing. Not to publish. Not for revenge. Just for clarity. A timeline. What happened? When? Who said what? Who stayed silent? I wasn't going back to scream. I wasn't going to make a scene. But I was going to be prepared. Because this time, I wasn't walking in hoping to be loved. I was walking in to remember that I never needed their love to begin with. That evening, Charleston was wrapped in mist. The kind that clung to windows and turned every headlight into a halo. I stood in front of my closet, unsure what to wear. It wasn't about fashion. It was about armor. Eventually, I chose a simple black sheath dress, structured, elegant. Nothing flashy. Just power and soft fabric. I clipped my hair back. Subtle makeup. And finally, I reached for my silver pendant. Lady Justice. She rested just below my collarbone, blindfolded and balanced. I took one last look in the mirror. This was not the girl they left behind. This was the woman they thought they buried, walking back. The drive to the Whitmore estate felt surreal. Familiar roads. Familiar turns. But everything felt more fragile now. Like if I breathed too hard, the past might crack open and swallow me whole. When I arrived, the estate looked exactly the same. Too perfect. Too polished. Like a painting of a family, not a real one. The valet took my keys. I stepped out. My heels clicked against the stone driveway. And then the front door opened. Warm light spilled out onto the cold stone. Voices. Laughter. Music. And somewhere inside that house, the people who once erased me now waited for me to walk in. I squared my shoulders. And did. Not as a ghost from the past, but as a reckoning. She reached for her wine, set it down again without drinking. That night, she said, voice barely above a whisper. At Christmas. Caleb told everyone you'd had a breakdown. That you left because you were unstable. He said it to Amelia. To your cousins. To everyone. My throat tightened, but I said nothing. And she hesitated, twisting her napkin in trembling fingers. I didn't stop him. I thought, if we didn't talk about it, it would go away. That you'd come back eventually. Quietly. She looked at me then. Really looked. And for a moment, I saw something unfamiliar in her eyes. Not pity. Not pride. Just fear. I was afraid, she whispered. Of losing everything. Of losing you. But mostly of what it would cost to stand up against them. There it was. The truth. Small. Late. But true. And yet, it didn't move me. Not the way she hoped. I stared at the flickering candle between us and said, quietly. You didn't protect me. She closed her eyes. As if the words had weight. As if they had waited 4 years to hit her. Tears pooled at the edges of her lashes, but she didn't let them fall. She reached into her purse. Pulled out a small velvet box, and slid it across the table. This was meant for you. Your grandfather wanted you to have it the day you passed the bar. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a delicate gold pendant, Lady Justice, but different from mine. More ornate. Balanced. Etched with a single word on the back. Unshakable. I swallowed hard. Caleb kept it, she said. He told everyone you didn't deserve it. That he'd keep it in case you ever recovered. My hand curled around the box. I closed it gently. Slipped it into the inner pocket of my blazer. Over my heart. I didn't thank her. Some things don't require gratitude. Some apologies come too late to heal, but not too late to acknowledge. I looked her in the eyes. They buried me once, I said. My voice calm. Even. I dug myself out. I won't do it again for their comfort. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but I was already rising. I picked up my coat, adjusted the pendant at my throat. Walked away without another word. The sound of my heels against the hardwood echoed behind me. And for once, I didn't feel like the daughter walking away in disgrace. I felt like a woman reclaiming her breath. Outside, the rain had turned soft, almost mist. The night smelled clean, like something old had finally been released into the air. I stood there for a moment, under the awning, watching the cars roll by. My phone buzzed. A text from Lisa. You okay? I stared at the screen. Then typed. I'm not looking for peace anymore. I'm looking for truth. That's enough. And it was. For now. Part 5, a name removed, a voice reclaimed. The Whitmore estate hadn't changed. Same red brick facade. Same white columns. Same manicured hedges trimmed within an inch of their lives, as if the wild, like the truth, had no place here. I parked near the end of the driveway, where the valet couldn't see how long I lingered in the car. The engine was off, but I hadn't moved. The pendant around my neck felt heavier than usual. Maybe it was the air, maybe it was memory. Maybe it was the past pressing its hands to my shoulders and whispering. Why are you here again? I looked at myself in the mirror. I wasn't the girl who left this house 4 years ago. I wasn't trembling. I wasn't hoping. I was observing. Recording. Preparing. And this time, I wasn't leaving with my head down. I stepped out. The familiar crunch of gravel. The flicker of gas lamps. The scent of night-blooming jasmine that always hung in the corners of these family events. Covering something sour underneath. Inside, the house pulsed with energy, champagne bubbles and forced laughter, the clinking of expensive glassware and polite applause. I handed my coat to a young man in white gloves and walked in. Steady and unhurried. Eyes turned. Not all at once, but in ripples. Recognition, discomfort, then polite surprise. She came. She's really here. What does she want? The cousins smiled too widely. The aunts pretended to fix their hair. The uncles shook their heads so subtly it was barely visible, like they were disappointed I hadn't stayed buried. I moved through the foyer. Past the family portraits that lined the walls. Caleb's image was everywhere, at 10, at 20, at his hospital residency ceremony, cutting the ribbon on the Whitmore pediatric wing. Every photo curated to tell the story of a perfect son. There were no gaps. Just absence. My absence. As if I'd never existed. I entered the main hall where the pre-wedding reception was already in full swing. A long table groaned with hors d'oeuvres too pretty to eat. Centerpieces bloomed in a way that felt funereal rather than festive, white roses and lilies towering between candelabras. A waiter offered me champagne. I declined. Water. Clear. Simple. Unpoisoned. From the corner of the room, I saw Caleb. He stood near the fireplace, exactly where our father used to hold court at these events. Surrounded by donors, family friends, and future board members of whatever medical foundation he was currently charming. His arm rested lightly around the waist of Amelia Grace Bennett. She was laughing at something someone said, but I noticed the stiffness in her spine. The way her eyes flicked toward me. Quick. Measured. Unsure. And then someone tapped a fork against a glass. The room quieted. Caleb stepped forward. He raised his champagne flute. Family, he said, his voice polished like it had been rehearsed. What a beautiful word. What a powerful idea. Murmurs of agreement. Smiles. It's not just blood. It's legacy. It's commitment. It's knowing your place in a long line of excellence. I felt something twist inside me. He scanned the room slowly, deliberately, until his gaze landed on me. Brief. Controlled. Cold. And sometimes, family includes those who return wiser. Humble. Ready to honor what they once walked away from. A soft chuckle rippled through the crowd. My fingers curled around my water glass. He smiled, gracious and golden. We welcome everyone here tonight. Even the ones who chose a different path. That was his warning shot. Disguised as civility. Wrapped in condescension. I didn't flinch. Instead, I lifted my glass, not in toast, but in promise. This ends tonight. Later in the evening, someone handed me a printed program for the rehearsal dinner tomorrow. A glossy folded card listing the schedule, menu, and family acknowledgements, in celebration of the Whitmore legacy. I flipped it open, scanning the familiar format. There was Uncle Richard's decades of charity work. Cousin Miles and his rowing championship from college. Aunt Cecilia's award for serving on a regional hospital board. Even Caleb's third-grade science fair win got a line. But nowhere was my name. Not my Harvard Law honors. Not my work as a judge. Not even a footnote. I wasn't overlooked. I was deleted. Deliberately. I looked across the room. Caleb was laughing at something Amelia said. But his eyes met mine for a split second. And he winked. A smug, slow wink. Like a dare. Like a bet he'd already won. I folded the card. Carefully. Silently. And placed it into my purse. Under the table, my fingers found the pendant resting against my chest. I closed my eyes, letting its cool weight settle me. There would be no tears tonight. No scenes. Only decisions. Only truth. I slipped out onto the back veranda, into the cooler air. The harbor wind stung a little, sharp, clean, honest. And for the first time since I walked into that house, I could breathe. But I wasn't alone. Footsteps. Measured. Familiar. I didn't turn around. Quite the spectacle, huh? Caleb's voice. He leaned against the stone railing beside me. Drink in hand, acting like we were old friends catching up after a long absence. You've made a splash, sis, he added. Showing up like some kind of avenging angel in heels. I stayed quiet. He sipped his drink, watching me. Still wearing that pendant, he said, his voice coated in faux affection. Cute. Still pretending it means something? That was it. I turned. Looked him in the eye. My voice came out low, even. One more lie, Caleb. One more whisper behind a wine glass. And I won't stay quiet. His smirk faltered. Just for a second. You wouldn't dare, he said. No, I said. I would prepare. And I already had. That night, back in my apartment, I sat at my kitchen table. The program card lay in front of me. I placed it beside the one thing that still bore my name, my judicial appointment certificate, signed and sealed. Then I opened my laptop. Typed a single message to Lisa. Ready the file. Tomorrow, they'll know the name they tried to erase. She replied with one word. Finally. Part 6, the moment they heard me. The music had faded. The clinking of champagne glasses echoed faintly across the grand salon of the Whitmore estate. Like the fading memory of a celebration no one fully believed in. Chandeliers cast golden light across polished floors and pressed smiles. The floral arrangements, so pristine they looked plastic, lined the tables like sentinels guarding a lie. And there I stood. At the edge of a gathering that once rejected me. I watched Caleb, standing at the center like a crowned prince. One hand wrapped around a champagne flute, the other around Amelia's waist. His voice flowed smooth and practiced, the tone of a man used to admiration. "Tonight," he said, "is about legacy. About honoring where we come from and who we've become." Polite applause. More glasses raised. And then his eyes found me. Just briefly. But enough. Enough for the smirk to curl at the edge of his mouth. Enough for the lie to burn its way back through the air. "And of course," he added, lifting his glass higher, "some success stories. Take detours. Some forget what it means to carry the Whitmore name with dignity. But we forgive. That's what family does." The room chuckled, just as it had 4 years ago. But this time, I didn't flinch. I stepped forward. Not quickly. Not loudly. Just purposefully. The hush rippled through the room like a breeze before a storm. In my hands, I held a simple manila folder. No gold. No glitter. Just the truth, raw and unvarnished. I walked to the grand piano, set the folder down on its polished surface. And opened it with slow, deliberate fingers. Silence tightened around the room like a noose. And then I began. "Commendation for excellence in public interest law," I read. Holding up a letter stamped with the state seal. Awarded to Judge Evelyn Foster for her unwavering commitment to justice and underserved communities. I let it hang in the air. Then placed it down. Lifted another. "Front page feature, Charleston Legal Weekly," I continued. Highlighting her landmark ruling protecting tenant rights against illegal evictions. I turned. Held their eyes. She was me. The silence cracked. People shifted. Some gasped. Some just stared. And then I said the words that had lived inside me for years. "Funny, for someone they said couldn't handle life, I've been quite busy changing it." A few hands lowered glasses. A few mouths opened, then shut. I looked toward Amelia. She stood frozen. Eyes wide. Face pale. She looked at the papers on the piano. Then at Caleb. Then back at me. And something inside her shifted, visibly. A tremble moved through her hands. "You lied," she said. Not loudly. But clearly. The entire room heard it. "You told me she had a breakdown. That she left because she couldn't take the pressure." Caleb stepped forward. "Amelia, this is not the place." "This is exactly the place," she snapped. "You used me. You used all of us to protect your story." The room was still. No violin music could cover this. No wine could smooth over the taste. Amelia looked at me. And I saw it, recognition. Not pity. Not admiration. Respect. She reached for her hand. And slowly, quietly, slipped off the engagement ring. "Thank you," she said to me, her voice steady. "Thank you for showing me who he really is." She set the ring down on the piano. Next to the papers, like closing the final page of a book she no longer wanted to be in. Then she turned. And walked out. Straight-backed. Unafraid. Free. Behind her, Caleb's voice broke the air in a fractured whisper. "Amelia, please, wait." But she didn't. And I didn't turn either. Because I didn't need to. The silence she left behind was louder than anything I could have said. Later that night. I stood alone on the back veranda. The sky had opened into a soft drizzle, the air thick with the scent of rain and jasmine. I leaned against the railing, eyes on the dark stretch of water beyond the estate. And breathed. Really breathed. Not careful. Not shallow. But deep. For the first time in years. Behind me, I heard a voice. Familiar. Quieter than before. My mother. Evelyn, she said. I didn't know he'd go that far. I didn't turn around. I just asked. And if I hadn't come? Would you still not know? She didn't answer. But that was the answer. I stayed there long after the party had thinned. Long after the music stopped. And when I finally left, I didn't say goodbye. Because I didn't need to be invited back anymore. They had written me out of their story. But tonight, I rewrote it. And I didn't need a single one of them to hold the pen. Part 7, The Name That Stood. News spreads fast. By morning, the Whitmore family group chats were buzzing like swarms of polite panic. Cryptic messages. Apologies dressed as questions. Half-hearted praying for everyone emojis. And just like I expected, Caleb made his move. That afternoon, a society lifestyle blog posted an article, clearly fed from someone close to him. Judge with a grudge, sister crashes Whitmore wedding in family feud. No mention of my work. No mention of the truth. Just 3 paragraphs painting me as bitter, unstable, hungry for attention. A fallen woman desperate for relevance. I read it twice. I didn't get angry. I didn't cry. Because for the first time in years, I understood something very clearly. When people can't control your story, they'll try to rewrite it. But not this time. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table. No makeup. No script. Just my laptop, the soft hum of the fridge behind me, and a silence that no longer felt hollow. I hit record. My voice was calm. My words were clear. For years ago, I said, I walked away from a family that had already turned their backs. They told people I was unstable. That I left in shame. That I was a problem. But what I really did was survive. I leaned in. Not to shout. But to be heard. I became a judge. I fought for families. I defended women who were told they were too loud. Too angry, too much. I became exactly the person I needed when they abandoned me. I didn't speak with rage. I spoke with truth. Some people want you silent. Erased. Invisible. But here's the thing about silence, it doesn't last forever. Eventually, truth arrives. Not always loud. Not always neat. But real. And undeniable. I paused. Breathed. You can remove someone's name from a family tree. You can erase them from photographs. But you can't erase their worth. You can't erase what they've become. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for visibility. I'm not here to be loved. I'm here to be known. I'm not here for them. I'm here for me. My name is Evelyn Foster. Judge. Daughter. Survivor. And no one erases me again. I clicked end recording. And uploaded it. No music. No filter. Just the truth. I thought maybe 20 people would see it. Maybe a few hundred. But in less than a day, it reached thousands. Women shared it. Legal communities shared it. Strangers messaged me, people I didn't know, thanking me for giving them courage to speak, to stay gone, to stop shrinking for the comfort of others. One message stood out. From Amelia. Thank you for helping me walk away from a man I was about to marry, but never truly knew. You gave me my freedom back. Another came from a teenage girl in Ohio. I watched your video with my mom. She cried the whole way through. Thank you. And then, silence from the Whitmores. Exactly as expected. A week later, I returned to court. Nothing special. Just another eviction case with a scared mother on one side and a developer on the other. I ruled in favor of the tenant. Afterward, as I left the bench, I noticed a young woman standing near the hallway. Nervous. Barely 20. Holding a folder to her chest like it might protect her. Judge Foster, she asked softly. I turned. She swallowed hard. I just wanted to say, I saw your video. And I stayed. I didn't go back to him. Because of you. Her voice trembled, but her eyes didn't. And in that moment, I understood something I never had before. This wasn't just about me anymore. It never really was. One rainy Sunday, I returned to the cemetery. Back to the hill beneath the oak trees where my grandfather lay. I brought two things. A small bundle of lavender. And a red velvet box. Inside it was the second Lady Justice pendant. The one my mother gave me during our tense dinner. The one meant for me on the day I passed the bar. But stolen, kept in a drawer like I'd never earned it. I knelt down, placed the lavender at his grave, then opened the box. I held the pendant in my palm. Delicate. Etched with a single word on the back. Unshakable. My fingers closed around it. You were right, I whispered. They tried to bury me. I smiled. But I grew anyway. Back at home, I opened my closet and pulled out a dusty folder filled with letters and essays I wrote in law school, dreams of one day mentoring women in law. Launching a foundation, building something that lived beyond the courtroom. I had forgotten those dreams. But now, they were calling again. Not for revenge. Not for validation. But for purpose. That night, I started drafting something new. Not a ruling. Not a complaint. A vision. The Foster Foundation for Legal Empowerment. For women. For the unheard. For anyone who ever thought they didn't matter because someone once told them they didn't belong. I still don't go to family holidays. They don't invite me. But I don't need their table anymore. Because I've built my own. And it is full. It is loud. It is honest. It is mine.